On today's riff lesson, we're going to take a look at the song Siberian Khatru by Yes. This is off the album Closer to the Edge, which is maybe Yes's most famous album. It's a quintessential prog rock album. And I'm going to show you 4 riffs, and these 4 riffs essentially make up the bulk of the song, the verse, chorus, intro. And if you learn these, you'll learn most of the song except for the instrumental section in the middle. So let's take a look at the intro. In the intro, we have solo guitar, and it's going over these chords: E minor 7, A minor 7, and B minor 7. Kind of a 1-4-5 in E minor. And Steve Howe is doing a bunch of open strings here, as well as some chord voicings that really remind me of Hendrix, some of these sort of moves. Anytime I hear something like that, I just think Hendrix. But over the E minor, we got this. So we're living in open position E minor pentatonic. So we slide from the 3rd fret on the B string to the 5th fret while also playing the open E string. So you get some dissonance into that unison. More open strings. Little hammer on a pull-off figure. And some muted strumming. And the muted strumming is going to come back a number of times throughout the riff. So that's what's happening over the E minor, and I'm really trying to make sure all these notes are ringing together. As part of the, what you want to do when you're playing open position chords and stuff like that is to let all the notes ring together. It's a very guitaristic kind of a sound, of kind of a bluesy, classic rock kind of sound, right? There's our next figure, and this is over A minor and then B minor. And he's really not playing the roots, right? So you could actually view this as kind of a C major and D major, but it's not till later when the bass comes in that you really hear the A and the B underneath. But it's these moves here. You have a chord shape, and you're going to hammer on higher notes. Essentially the same shape, up 2 frets for each chord. And then this little sliding finger. And I'm not sure exactly how many times he does it. It varies depending on the studio version to the live version, but it's a quick slide between 9 and 7 on the A string. And then we're into the second half of the riff, which is just a variation on the first half, with things up a little bit higher in register. So over the E minor, more pentatonic runs, all the way down to the open low E string. And over the A minor, we're dealing with this chord shape, but kind of the upper part of it. And the same thing on B minor. And then at the very end, we have this, which there's no bass note underneath, but I'm kind of hearing it as F sharp underneath. You have these voicings of thirds. And then this dissonance here between the 17th fret on the B string and 14th fret on the E string. And then the first finger does a tiny slide up and down there. So. And that's the intro. I'll play the whole thing slowly for you. One other thing to keep in mind here is that Yes is not playing to a click. So this is kind of freeform. It's in time, roughly, but it's not in time to like a metronomic click, right? So Steve Howe is pushing and pulling the beat a little bit depending on how he's feeling it, and the band is also reacting in person. So it actually was kind of tricky to play along with the studio recording because there's some parts where he's like slowing down or picking up. And it varies depending on different live recordings too, right? And that's kind of the beauty of these early prog records, especially, is they're not playing to clicks, they're all playing together, so there's a lot of this sort of live movement, and there's also a little bit of sloppiness here and there between all the musicians. I think that just adds to the character of the piece, but it's just something to keep in mind if you're practicing this, that it's not something you necessarily need to practice to like a perfect click, right? There's some artistic license you can take with this. Next, we're going to take a look at what I'm going to call the interlude section, and this is going over a G major chord and a B minor chord. So we're in the key of B minor here. Now, you could say G Lydian because you're starting on a G. There's some extensions to these chords. I'm not exactly sure what. I didn't notate out the piano part, but I think it's more like a G over A and then like a B minor 7. Because we're coming from E minor before in the intro, right? So it's a cool shift to move to a different key here. It kind of changes the color of the sound. So what we have is this riff. So this is just a pattern that's going to repeat over and over again. And I'll talk about the rhythm in a second. But we start on the 6th fret of the G string, pull off to 4, 7 on the D string, back to 4 on the G, and then 5 on the E. And those are all the notes we're going to use here. So it starts in 4/4, does that twice, and then we move to a variation that's in 7/4. And essentially all he does is to take the second of these riffs and like push it forward half a beat, so it's not starting on beat 1. So that second half looks like this. That's a pretty simple way to make something sound kind of proggy and give you an odd time signature. It's just to take the same pattern and you just shift where it starts. And in that case, what happens is it cuts off a beat at the end. So you have 4/4, 4/4, 4/4, 3/4. Or you could say 2 measures of 4/4 and 1 measure of 7/4. So after he plays it down here in this register, he just moves it up an octave. So you start on the 9th fret of the high string and get this big stretch up to 12. Exact same rhythm and everything, just kind of moving it up for a different color. And then he does it one more time, all the way up here. Now Steve Howe has a 22 fret guitar, so he can't play an E up here. I could do it on this guitar. So he plays the E down an octave in this particular case. But it's the exact same rhythm and the exact same riff. And it's kind of cool to shift things through octaves because you really change the way something sounds. It kind of builds the things up before it kicks into the verse. After the first chorus, this riff comes back, but it's just doing the 7/4 part of it, instead of doing those first 2 measures of 4/4. And this is a nice way to bring something back because you have essentially the same riff but with a different variation to it. So really focusing on these odd meters this time instead of the 4/4 like earlier. And that's just a composition technique that you can use, is to bring a section back but do it slightly differently just to kind of change it up a bit. Next up is the verse riff, which sounds like this. So this I'm thinking of as being G blues. It's all rooted around the note G. And this goes into this push and pull between minor and major, which I talked about a lot in my lesson last week on the blues in prog. It's one of the most important sounds in blues is to have the contrast of major and minor. So you have major style chords, and you have minor pentatonic over the top of it, right? That's the classic blues way, at least as a guitarist, to play. So going from the minor third right to the major third. And right within this riff, we actually have that happening. The beginning of the riff is in G minor pentatonic, or G minor blues. And Steve Howe is picking every single one of these notes. I wasn't sure when I first listened to it, but after listening closely and watching some live videos, he's definitely picking every note. And that's something about these earlier records is guitar technique is not nearly where it's at now, just based on how old the instrument was at the time. So some of these picked parts are a little bit sloppy. Actually, I probably played them kind of sloppy too. But I think that fits with the character of this particular song, because it wasn't supposed to be like this inhuman metronomic thing, right? It's more about the kind of attitude of it. So the first half there is in G minor, and then the second half looks like this. And that's all right within G major pentatonic. So you have G minor pentatonic and then G major pentatonic. And that looks like this. 4, 0, 0, 2 on the G string. And then 3rd fret on the B string. And we have this 4, 2, 0, 2 on the G string. And then the note A. Now live, Steve Howe plays this on the high E string because he's often singing during this part, which is kind of complex, so he likes to keep his hand in the same position. I like to play it up here on the B string on the 10th fret. That way you can get a further slide down. Also sometimes, especially when there's not singing going on, he'll do an octave way the heck up here on the 14th fret of the G string and 17th fret of the A string. I like the sound of that as well. And in my version at the beginning, I did kind of different combinations of those things. And sometimes there'll be slight variations live as well. I think a few times on the album too, he plays the 3rd fret on the G string instead of the 4th fret. And it's not like this is happening in the same place every time. There's a little bit of improvisation kind of built into the music in a way. But this whole riff is a really great example of using kind of these bluesy ideas in more of a prog context. All right, one more riff to look at, and this is the chorus riff, and it goes like this. So this is all rooted around G again, in this case G major. Lots of cool embellishments happening to the chord, kind of a masterclass in embellishing one chord. So we have a G bar chord with these muted strumming in between. Another move here that's very much a Hendrixy kind of thing. We do have the note C a number of times here, but the root note never changes from G in the bass. So I'm kind of thinking of this as like just a G suspended in that case. Then it's down a G major blues scale. More muted strumming, and then the same chord move again. Then he moves up into this G major shape, kind of the next position up. More embellishments, muted strumming, and then this D shape, like a D major chord, but up on G, with another embellishment on top, then to the 5th fret of the G string into an A minor chord. And then it goes finally to an F sharp minor chord. And that happens right before the vocal interlude that then leads back into the interlude riff I talked about earlier. So this whole part slowly looks like this. And every single one of these little embellishments he's doing is something that you should look at on your own if you haven't done this kind of stuff before, because all of these are super useful. Like if I was doing rhythm stuff over a G major chord, that's all kind of stuff that I would do. Little hammers and pull-offs, some muted strumming, some slides, and all of this can really spice up something where you could just go right with one chord, but all these little runs and these little embellishments just kind of help to make it more colorful, I think. So there's a look at a few of the riffs from Siberian Khatru by Yes. I think this song is super fun to play once you get it down, and there's a lot to be learned from these riffs about classic prog guitar playing, but also classic rock playing, blues playing. There's some really cool harmonic ideas, some interesting chord embellishments and inversions, and there's some really interesting rhythmic stuff as well. So dig into these. I think there's a lot to learn from it. And if you enjoyed this lesson, as always, subscribe, hit the bell notification, like, comment, share, and please let me know what other riffs you'd like to see me cover in this series. Till next time, stay proggy.